to go right ahead with it. Okay, here we go. Now we got it. Well, hello. I tell you, this has been an evening. This has been an evening trying to get connected, but we're going to go right ahead with it because we know that things happen. So my name is LaQuita Parks, and welcome to another episode of My Heart. I was going to say my heart on pages. You know what? This is the second time that I have said my heart on pages when I'm talking about the power of your story. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes things happen and we get discombobulated and things don't always go as they should. And listen, if you guys are listening to us or you're watching this interview, this has been a day. You hear me? It has been an absolute crazy day. Before we get started, though, I do want to give a shout out to my baby girl. My little baby granddaughter, today is her first birthday. Her name is Gabriella Sinai, and Gabriella turned 1 today, and she loves her Nana to sing to her, "Somebody's gonna be 1 year old." So every time she sees me singing, she starts and she puts up that one little finger and she starts singing, "Somebody's gonna be 1 year old." So I wanted to wish her a happy birthday before we get started. So we're going to jump right into our discussion today. I have a special guest with me, and his name is Rodney Williams. And before we get started, I am LaQuita Parks. I am your host, and I am the owner of PayProV Publishing. And PayProV means pain, progress, victory, because I believe without pain, there's no progress, and without progress, there can be no victory. So I help people take their stories from a thought to a realization. And, 100% of everybody living and dead has a story. Did you know that, Rodney Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
100% of everybody living and dead has a story. But not everybody will tell their story, and there's an abundance of reasons why they might not tell their story, but it does not negate the fact that they have a story. And today we're going to dive into some conversations, and I'm going to ask some questions, and we're going to have a good discussion, and we're going to talk about fighting against the wind. And it felt like we was fighting against the wind for the last 30 minutes, right? Didn't it, Rodney?
Yeah, some strong winds, hurricanes.
Listen, it did not make any sense. As much as we use this digital platform, do you know we could not get connected for whatever reason? We could not get connected. And you know what, Rodney? I think the powers that be, whatever that is, and whoever that is, I think they were trying to say that they didn't want us to have this conversation.
Seemed that way.
What kind of stuff you gonna share that the powers that be don't want us to have this conversation?
Whenever you speak wisdom that might change people's lives, you can be faced with opposition. You talked about fighting against the wind. We dealt with a hurricane from the beginning, right?
See, you better say it.
Yeah.
We were sitting here pulling our hair out. And look, and Mr. Williams had the nerve to say, "Is it too late to reschedule?" I was like, "No, we're not rescheduling. We're going to do this." Yeah. I don't care. We're going to do this. And you know what? It's all right, because this is real life. This is real life. Life happens. And you know what? Every time we overcome an obstacle, no matter how big, no matter how small, then we get more empowered to be able to move on to the next thing and to move on to the next thing. And so I am so excited that we didn't give up the fight. And I'm so excited that the frustration didn't win. And we are here. We have still got a few technical issues or a few technical challenges, but that's okay. We're going to go right ahead with it, and we're going to tell our stories. So, Mr. Rodney Williams, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your diligence. And please, when you get off this thing, you need to give your wife a hug and a kiss and tell her thank you for her help, because I know it was frustrating. So please tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Rodney Williams. I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. I relocated here to Atlanta in 2017, and everything that happened in between was like fighting the wind. My story, well, basically the basis of the book is based on a coming of age, based on my experiences in life. I was a young man growing up in Baltimore, and as you know, Baltimore is a major metropolitan urban city, and there are a lot of challenges facing young Black men in Baltimore back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I was not immune to those challenges. One of the things that my book brings out is the evolutionary process of rebelling without cause to rebelling with a cause.
Mhm.
We talked about, you and I, the definition of rebelling and evolving and what it all meant. Well, if you look at what's happening today, it's just history repeating itself. You know, you have a lot of young people committing a lot of senseless crimes and using their energy in negative ways. And they have so many talents that could be used to be positive and productive. And there's a disconnect as to why these things continue to happen. When you tell your story, people are able to look at it and learn from your mistakes, and maybe it'll have a positive effect on them and they would change some of their decision making. I suffered a lot from making bad decisions, choices, and consequences. That's what it comes down to. When you choose things, everything we choose has a consequence.
Mhm.
And sometimes we don't even know why we choose the things that we choose. But when we suffer the consequences, we begin to do self evaluation. And it was through a lot of self evaluation that I was able to come to a lot of the conclusions that are in the book. First, let me thank you for the opportunity to be on the show. Thank you for reading over some of my early writings and discovering that I did have a little bit of talent, enough that you was willing
Little, a lot.
to, publish, be the publisher of the book. And I want to, everything that I have learned in the short bit of time that you accept in being my publisher has been all positive. And I just feel blessed to be able to have this conversation with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. You know what? Sometimes it's this, and I know it's not easy. I know getting up the courage to share your story is not easy. And then once you get up the courage to share your story, then here you go. It's like, okay, I got to write it now and put it in a book and all that. I know it's not easy. I've been there myself. But as you go through the process, and I think what I told you before, it can be a frustrating process because depending on your story, it's not just you. You know, you're sharing your story, you're exposing you. And when you expose yourself, then you expose your circle. You expose those people around you. And it's not easy. And I never tell anybody that it is easy. In fact, I tell you from the rip, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be frustrating. There's going to be some anxiety. All that's true. You just said something that really, really sticks out to me. When you made the comment about when we start doing things and making decisions, then we start suffering the consequences, and then we have to do a self-evaluation. I call it mirror conversation. I pick up this mirror, and you got to have mirror conversation. And sometimes you don't like what you see, but you have to be honest with yourself in order to grow through it. I was having a conversation with a good friend yesterday, and she's having some problems with her son. And I said to her, I said, as parents, when we start making decisions and we start doing things, and when our children are smaller, it's one thing, they go with the grain. But as they get bigger and they start recognizing some things, then they start to rebel because they start recognizing their friends doing this. And it's like, okay, my friends have a stable home, or my friends, they're not moving from pillar to pole. Something ain't right. So they can't say something ain't right. So they rebel. I said, but you have to have a mirror conversation, and you have to own up that this is something that I did. And so you got to work on you in order for you to save them, because sometimes people got to know that you're serious. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that you said that, because that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. Because sometimes, Rodney, the hardest thing is to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I messed up. I messed up.
Yes, it is.
So what made you decide to want to write a book? Because everybody got a book in them, but everybody don't want to write it. So what made you decide to want to write a book?
Actually, everything that I've been through led me to believe that it was not just for me. My life experiences were not just meant for me to experience them and keep that to myself. I would like to give you a little, well, I'm quite sure you know the background, but let me give some of the listeners some background information.
Yeah, we got 100,000 people listening, 1 million people listening. So let them know the background.
Yeah, well, the title of the book is The Evolution of a Rebel. Yes. I began to rebel early in life, like you were just speaking about children and our youth. We had temper tantrums, we do things. And a lot of people say, oh, you're just young. Well, really, there are underlying reasons why we do stuff. and we don't discover those reasons until later on. Sometimes when we're getting beaten, sometimes it's later on in life when we're looking back through counseling or whatever. And a lot of my underlying issues were undiscovered and untreated mental health problems. The story of my life began with the fact that I was raised by my maternal grandmother, my mom's mom. Both of my parents were victims of that 1960, 1970 heroin importation, in which everybody eventually got strung out in some kind of way. Either they were affected by it or it affected somebody that was close to them. I was affected directly because both my mom and dad became addicted to her. As a result, my grandmother, as any grandparent back then would do, they just stepped in, but she was a trooper and she stepped in and she adopted through the courts, even though she was my grandmother, me and my sister. And she raised us along with her own children, which my mom and her sister, my aunt. And we were just taken in and given nothing but love and support. But in spite of that, I rebelled. And my first act of rebellion had to do with, even though I had everything that I needed, everything that I wanted, I wasn't deprived of anything. I began to act out in school. That was usually one of the first signs. You know, I was in the gifted and talented classes. I did good on my test scores. I liked the school. Now, living in Baltimore, sometimes it would snow. So if it snowed, that meant you missed school. I hated it when we had to miss school because of snow. I was one of them kids. I wanted to go to school. I liked school, but it was usually after school that my attention began to drift out of things. So my form of rebellion was just hanging out. I wanted to hang out with those kids that you were just talking about, the ones that really maybe had to be out there. I didn't have to be out there. I wanted to be out there. Mm-hmm. I chose to pursue, acts that were not in accordance with how my grandmother raised me. She was a diehard Christian. She didn't go to church every Sunday, but we had to go. And she kept the word in front of us, certain scriptures, embedded in our mind. She gave us the moral compass, but I would choose to. And I use the word choose very loosely because, as you just said, we have to accept what we do. I chose to go the other way. Mm-hmm. And as a result of choosing, people would say, what is wrong with you? I said the mirror moment, but I wasn't looking in the mirror then. Why do you do what you do when you come from the type of family that you come from, when you have the type of love and support that you have?
You have to be.
Yeah, why are you out here standing on the corner? Why? And so at that time, of course, I wouldn't answer the question. I really wanted to get out my face. And I would become, adamant about whatever my position was. But there were times when I wanted to. And it took me a long time to realize that my rebellion against my grandparents at that time had to do more with being separated from my parents than them. I could not understand, even though I did have knowledge and information as to why, I still couldn't put it together to the point that I appreciated what was in front of me. Mm-hmm. And I chose more so what their lifestyle reflected than what my grandparents' lifestyle reflected, subconsciously.
You know what? I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about some things in my past. And I'm thinking about my children and going through a divorce and going through an ugly separation and thinking about my mom and my sisters. And you just nailed it when you said you wanted it didn't matter. You didn't know the whole scope of it, but you knew some of it, and that didn't matter. You wanted to be with your parents. And that's the makeup. Children are supposed to be with their parents. And so children have the desire to be with their parents. That's why you see a lot of children migrate to the absentee parent. They become the good parent becomes the bad guy because they're keeping them away from the bad parent who really is the bad guy. And right. So, and you can't, as a child, you have no way of being able to rationalize that, because children have, I tell, when I do my mentoring with my parents, I tell them that you got to keep children out of grown folk business because their minds are not capable of understanding everything that's going on. Even if they're mature, it's still a child's mind.
Right.
So I love that. So keep going, keep going.
So my rebellion against my grandparents led to as I well, not at that time I didn't know what the purpose was, but now looking back, and I know that resonates with a lot of people now because there are a lot of broken homes. For whatever reason, the mother and the father aren't together, or kids are being raised by aunts and grandmothers, and they're given a certain level of love, and it's not accepted or appreciated, and people are trying to figure out why. Where the root issue, it was a mental health issue, was separation. Not understanding the effects of being or desiring to be with your parents. So that became the core of the rebellion. But then, because it was undiagnosed and untreated, it began to escalate.
Mm-hmm.
So my separation rebellion turned into just outright anger management, not being able to or not wanting to control when I couldn't have my way. The funny part is I was spoiled at home. I got my way at home with my grandparents. If I wanted something, they would get it. And my grandma worked 6 days a week. She had only day off for Sunday. And on Sunday, she cooked for us. So I don't think she really had a day off. But yet, I never knew what it took to do what she did. And, now looking back, I regret not appreciating what not appreciating it fully, what she provided me with. Because see, the people that care about you the most get hurt the most. Because when I started having these anger issues, and anger issues are definitely going to lead to a rebellion against the rules of society, which is going to lead to incarceration, which was the path that I escalated upon. Most of the people incarcerated have underlying mental health issues. Mm-hmm. So another reason of the book is to promote mental health awareness, because it's going to come out that all of these kids, whether you see them in a school shooting or not, they have other issues besides what's obvious. So once I started rebelling in school, getting in trouble in school, I'm robbing my schoolmates after school, stuff like that, I wind up getting incarcerated at the age of 16. So, of course, the first person I heard was my grandmother. She the first person at the jail, making sure I'm all right. But yet, you were the one that was providing me with all this love and support that I rejected. She was there to make sure I wasn't mistreated, that I had something to eat. She would come visit me, pay the bail's bombing out of money she had probably been saving her whole life. Sometimes she probably would even, back then, I think you could sell your insurance policies or whatever to get cash money. And, if you're talking about predatory lending now, you know what it was back then. But she was constantly kicking out money to make sure that I was all right, or to get out of trouble that I was in. But this one time, it wasn't possible. So at 16, I wound up being sentenced to 5 years in the Maryland House of Correction. And back then, even though I was young, I was put in there with the adults. And the funny part is, these are the same prisons that my dad would be in. At one point, I slept right next to my dad. As I evolved through the system, I began to come in contact with him, but that was later on, not on my first incarceration, but on my second. You say second, yeah, because the first one, 2.5 years in, I got into an altercation, and I was pretty good, back then, and I still consider myself pretty good with my hands. And sometimes being good at doing bad things still ends bad. And so I got into an altercation in which, and it was with a religious head. And the reason why I'm not going to isolate the religion at this time, because it's not a whole religion thing, but it was a religion head, and I wound up getting into a conflict with this person. And a couple of days before I was supposed to go home to visit, I was laying in my bed asleep, and they just poured gas on me and set me on fire. I was 18 at that time. So imagine at the age of 18, experiencing a life-changing, physical altering trauma. So if we went up the mental health scale, we would start off with the separation issue, which escalated into anger issues. And now that I have been injured and disfigured, I'm dealing with post-traumatic stress from everything that attaches to that type of trauma. And that was the state that I was in at the age of 18 when I was released back into society. The problem about that release is that I went back into the same neighborhood with the same people, with the same expectations. even though I had experienced this trauma, I expected people to still respect me and treat me the same. That wasn't going to happen, but that's what I expected. So my post-traumatic stress began to show up in ways of, I wouldn't say rage, but I expected people to treat me a certain way and I wasn't getting that. And so I relocated to New Jersey to a family member that also was showing me love and respect, trying to keep me away from getting into more trouble. And of course, I walked straight into trouble in New Jersey because I was looking for trouble. I had not stopped looking for trouble.
Mhm.
And I hadn't learned anything. Even though I had been through all of this, I still hadn't learned anything. And while there, I met somebody else that was into the fast lane, my faster lane, in the drug distribution game. And that eventually led to me thinking, I was Tony Montana or somebody. And even things go wrong in that fast lane. And it did. And eventually 2 people got shot, 1 died. And even though when I went to trial, I was found not guilty of pulling a trigger or having a gun, the law states if you are with somebody that does, you're just as guilty as that person. That's choices and consequences, who we hang out with, who our friends are, who our associates are.
But we teach our children, you judge by the company that you keep.
And birds of a feather flock together. So guess what? What Ray Ray get, you're gonna get because you like hanging with Ray Ray. Keep hanging with Ray Ray.
Keep hanging right. Yeah, I like that. There's a circle. I do a program, a mentoring program, and I tell the children, and you would be just wonderful. We had to talk offline about that, but I do a program, and it's called I used to teach my children, am I my brother's keeper? You are your brother's keeper. But I do a little experiment called ride or die. And I start out with the kids and I say, are you ride or die? And every single one, 100% of the time, every single one of those young people stand up and say they ride or die. But as I keep going through, and my son, who's had his share of run-ins too, he started asking questions, are you ride or die? And as we ask those questions, I'm just, we just tag teaming off each other, and I'm starting to look. And as you see the people standing up, and they start sliding down into the seat. And before you know it, they've sat down because they realize I'm not ride or die. And then when I say, you know what, sometimes you die, everybody is sitting in their seat and they start realizing that I'm not ride or die. And so they don't understand. And having to go through that, just getting that, what they call scared straight. I went through, my mom put us through it. I didn't need it. But my sister was, my mom was, everybody, she was of the mindset, everybody get a whooping at the same time. Don't matter who did it, everybody get in trouble. And I'm like, where'd she get that from? But anyway, I like that because it's absolutely true. Whatever, if we have young people and old people too, who never got the lesson. They keep hanging with the same people. And even if those people are not committing crimes and they have no motivation, you have no motivation. If they have no get up and go and you're hanging with them, your mentality is going to be their mentality and you're not going to go any further than they go. So you have to be careful. That's why, listen, young people, if you're out there listening, and I know you are, and parents, if you don't have your young people listening, you need to bring them in or replay this for them later. That's why your parents tell you to be careful of the company you keep. Choose wisely.
Okay, let's add this to your ride or die. If you was to ask those kids, right, just hanging out with this person might cost you your life. You say most of them swooped down in their chair, they didn't want to. Well, that situation cost me life plus 20 cents.
Life plus 20 cents. That's 20. Life plus 20.
I don't even know how you get to the plus 20. You got to be dead, and then again, you got to do the 20. But that was the sentence, life plus 20. I was 20 years old at that time when they sentenced me to life plus 20 in the New Jersey Department of Correction. And this is after I just came home from doing 5 for, well, 2.5 for Maryland before the incident happened. And then I go to New Jersey and I end up with a life plus 20 sentence for felony murder. Wow. For a shooting that occurred during another crime. Now, the thing about a sentence like that is when you try to wrap your mind around it, it's like impossible. I can't do that, right? And I never kind of like accepted the sentence, but I do know that in the midst of the sentence, I realized God was real because only God could take you through a situation like that. And when I got sentenced, I went to some of the worst maximum security prisons you go to on the East Coast, from New Jersey to Virginia to Baltimore to Florida, supermaxes, places underground where they designed to deprive you of sensory stimulation. It's so quiet that you can't hear anything. You just begin to get dizzy from being silent. There's no interaction with people. There is no talking. There's no TV. There's nothing. And when you reach that level of separation from humanity, you begin to question your own existence. And that was at one of my lowest points in Virginia, where I had to go to the Red Onion Correctional Facility. It was a supermax underground. It was designed for people that I guess had committed, major crimes, but I got sent there for a fight. They can send you anywhere. The one thing, especially the young people need to know, when you become a ward of the state, they can do what they want with you. They can send you anywhere at any time. They can put you on a plane, send you cross country. They can do anything. They can also separate you from those that you're around if they really, really want to punish you. They have that type of authority. So when we talk about prison life, it ain't what you see on TV. It ain't a whole lot of smuggled cell phones that's going to keep you from being deprived of your senses, where you can't hear and where you can't interact with other people, especially in the day of social media. And I emphasize that because I ended up doing 30 years straight as a result of that life plus 20 cents. I was able to get a 20 back because it wasn't a legal sentence. It shouldn't have been a plus. The mandatory minimum was 30 years. So from February the 17th, 1987 to April the 17th of 2017, I was incarcerated. That was all of my 20s, all of my 30s, and all of my 40s. Now, that's the price you pay, not only for the people you hang out with, but the choices you make. See, because I was looking for something when I started hanging. It's not all that fun. It's mine too. But these are the things that now you want to tell people so that when they thinking that, hey, I ain't got no gun, they ain't gonna do nothing to me. Yeah. Just because you're here, just because you're on the scene, just because you're with this person. And you can best believe no matter how hard you think they is, they're gonna let them know you put it. Ain't nobody
can you reiterate that again? Can you repeat that again? Because I need for we gotta replay this. We gotta replay this and share this with young people. I need for you to say that again, just because there are so many young people who have that mentality. It's not gonna happen to me. I'm just riding. I wasn't doing nothing. I didn't go in there. I didn't shoot. I didn't da. And what you're saying, it doesn't matter. You serve hard time just for being on the scene.
Just being there, because your presence is a crime. Your presence at the scene of a crime is a crime. And you can only control what you do. But the problem is you don't know what the guy next to you is going to do. That's right. You don't know how he's going to respond. But you're responsible for whatever his response or action says. That's the law. It's simple. It's called accomplice liability. Whatever he does and you're with him, you're going to get punished the same exact way. Now, some states are different, but I know that to be a fact in most states, and it definitely was a fact in New Jersey. So
let me ask you a question, because there's so much discussion now, and there will be to the end of time about racism. And, did you just said to me, what I just heard you say was that's the law, that's the law, that's the documented law. It doesn't have anything to do with black and white. That's the law.
Whether it's enforced is another question. Whether it's applied equally is another question. For example, prior to my trial, and this is documented in the state of New Jersey, they was real in Atlantic City, as a matter of fact, where all the casinos was at. They were having problems being able to compile juries that had black people on. So one of the things my lawyer did was to file what they call a jury challenge, because they felt like black people were so desperate to work at the casinos that they would choose work over jury duty. And so there was a disproportionate number of blacks versus white for me to choose from, even though I wanted to choose from my peers, which were of the African American community. So yes, things like that occurred before my trial. And I lost an appeal before trial. And the funny thing about it, a guy on death row, and this is the power of sharing. He was on death row, and he shared with me the problems that was already happening in that community and in that county. And he made me aware of it to the point that he said, I think you should raise this because it's going to be an issue in your trial too. He didn't know me from a can of paint. Mm-hmm. But because he knew that this existed, and he was an activist, he probably had his own motives, but at the same time, it was a fact that was a problem in that county at that time. So I did raise that. It was denied. But coming out of that 30 years, right? And here's where the mental health comes in. That coming out of 30 years, I look back over my life, I didn't get therapy when I was young for being separated from my parents. I didn't get therapy when I got out of incarceration after being burnt. You would think a traumatic experience like that would cause me to seek therapy. I didn't. And now, coming out of a 30-year straight period of incarceration, I didn't get therapy then when I first came home. I eventually got therapy by mistake. I stumbled onto it. But the problem with that delay is that every little mental health problem that I had became bigger and worse if it would have got treated when it was first just a separation issue. A lot of things could have been prevented. And that's the lesson that I try to bring out and will bring out in the book about treatment and mental health. You have to catch it early. And I don't mean just giving people medication and pills. A lot of problems can be resolved just by talking. Mm-hmm. Some therapy involves no medication. But if you allow it to go untreated over a period of years or decades, there's no telling what might be necessary to heal the person and then make them whole so that they can be a productive citizen, because mental health is now becoming more prevalent because of COVID. Everybody talking about COVID make you depressed. It was things making you depressed before COVID.
Right.
It was things that was breaking up houses and homes before COVID, especially in our community. But we don't go get treated because we feel like if you go seek therapy, people gonna say you crazy. They gonna say you crazy anyway. Everybody got crazy uncle or aunt or cousin, somebody.
They Uncle so-and-so is in the basement. When I was coming up, for me, and I know I've shared this story with you, I'm a victim of medical childhood trauma. And so I don't do, I have lots of appointments, but I was jabbed in the thigh with a needle by a nurse who wasn't even authorized to give shots. That led me to having 15 surgeries on my right leg and foot. And that started a medical tsunami. So going to the doctor is a traumatic experience for me. I knew that it was. I don't like going to the doctor. I don't like needles. I don't do shots. It doesn't matter that it's a vaccine. I know there's to vaccinate or not vaccinate. That doesn't matter to me. It's a shot. And I don't do shots unless I'm in the hospital because I have number one, the bad reaction. Number two, I have a bad reaction, and it's traumatic for me. Right. So when I went to the doctor before the pandemic hit, I went to had to go to the Mayo Clinic. So I've spent about 4 months at the Mayo Clinic, back and forth to the Mayo Clinic. And so one of them referred me to to see a therapist, a psychologist. And I said, okay, so I don't need to see a psychologist. I'm not depressed. I talk all the time, talk to people all the time. And so when I went, I found myself, sitting across from the doctor, or the psychologist, and he's asking me questions, I'm asking him questions. So we're kind of going back and forth. And he said, as we're going on, and I said, okay, I guess I can come in here every week or every, once a week or whatever to talk to you for a while. So he would ask these questions and, are you depressed? And I'm like, well, no. And then as we started going through and we started talking, the idea of going to the doctor and all that, and I started to notice that my gut started to change. I started to feel some kind of way, and the emotion started to erupt inside of me, and I became overwhelmed with emotions. And I didn't really understand why, because I talk all the time. I have a lot of people I can talk to. And he said, you have PTSD. And I was like, what? I've never been in the military. How do I have PTSD?
Yeah.
And he said, every time you go to, it's a problem for me, and it creates anxiety, and I never thought about it that way. And then now, as I tell my story, the more I tell my story, of course I do. I went into the hospital and a nurse came in and jabbed me in the thigh, and it caused a tsunami of problems that I will die with. And how could I not have post-traumatic stress syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't equate it to myself, because when you hear about it, you hear about, people being in the military, and that's where it comes from. You don't equate it to some type of trauma, and that's what it is. And I said, wow, I never even equated that. And so how do you start healing? How do you start healing? And what did it for you? I know you said you started talking about it.
For me, what happened was I realized there was a pattern. Every time I got out of being incarcerated, they always tell you, if you need help, these are places for you. But you think that, first of all, if you go, there's these misconceptions. It's like it's some charity thing, and then they're gonna be experimenting on you, or you lay on a couch and you just tell a doctor your problem. These pictures come to mind. Mm-hmm. But what I realized is that I wanted to do something different, and in order for me to maintain where I was, I had to do something totally different than I had done any other time. And seeking therapy was the one thing that came to the top of my list that I had never done. And I'm 55 years old now. So at 55, if that was the first time I got therapy, this could have imagined if I would have got it a little early, like all those years that I had wasted. I think that now, as you say, people talk all the time, but what do they be saying? Do you tell people really what's going on with you? Now, trust becomes the issue, because you're not going to just tell anybody your business. Mm-hmm. I think what the experience you had is the same experience I had, is that it's an unintended release, right? That takes place when you're able to confide in somebody that you trust. Mm-hmm. The dams just breaks and the wells just spill over, because there's this feeling that now I can let this go. And that's how the healing starts. Writing is another form of release. So, writing my book is very therapeutic. It's a catharsis. It's like you start this process of, you first want to be understood, because it's like people say, after I meet you, you're a good guy. Nobody that I have met since I've been in Atlanta could have ever imagined my past. And sometimes I look at it like right now, I'm also a certified personal trainer. I train with law enforcement. As you know, one of our favorite people, Dr. Allen, who works at the courthouse.
Michelle Allen, shout out to Dr. Michelle Allen.
Yes, Dr. Michelle.
Author of Milan Takes a Bow.
She was the one that connected us, and I met her through Judge Peggy Walker, who is a retired juvenile judge, who recruited me to be on the Douglas County Youth Advisory Committee, because my life experiences had value to helping other people, avoid making those choices. And you have Tiffany, and there's another lady on there that's from the juvenile Department of Juvenile Services. But this team of women were so proactive that when I came in the midst of them, I felt once again blessed to be a part of it. But they wanted to hear my story. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They wanted to hear what I had been through, and how what I had been through could help other people not go down that path. Because you see it on the news every day. It's a young person. And see, I could have probably been influenced when I was young, but it wasn't too many people talking positive stuff. They was talking crazy. Go ahead, do you, be you, do your thing. Mm-hmm. This stuff, that ain't what you need to hear. There must be opposing information. Mm-hmm. And the person that present that information must be credible, and they must be believable. So if I talk to a youth about prison, there's nothing you can't tell me about prison. I just spent 33 out of 55 years in prison. So what you want to know? See, because I'm going to tell you this stuff no one will tell you. See, because while you're in there, everybody you know going to die. Your mom, your grandmother, your sisters. I mean, it's a lot of stuff you haven't heard. They don't tell you that. Mm-hmm. They're going to make it glamorous. Yeah, boy, you can get a cell phone, you can do this. Yeah, but do they tell you about those late nights when it's just you in that room and you're asking yourself, how did I get here? See, they ain't going to tell you about that, because those are the thoughts that's going to change your life. That's going to make you don't want to do this no more. That's going to make you not want to hang out with Ray Ray. That's going to make you want to be different. when you get out this time. So my goal as not only as an author, but I want to be a mentor. I want to use my time in any kind of way I can, because there's this scripture that my grandmother, she suggested, but she used to tell me every night before I went to bed to read the 23rd Psalms, repeat the serenity prayer. But there's this scripture in Proverbs 22:6 that says, train up a child the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. That word old gets overlooked a lot. And the one thing that I find myself inspired by is my grandmother. She died while I was in prison. She had a stroke in the middle floor of her apartment. And I believe that, me being in prison contributed to, the deterioration of her health. But I wasn't there for her when she needed it. I wasn't there when my mom died, when my dad died. I wasn't there with nobody that I cared about died, because I was in prison paying the price for hanging with Ray Ray. And when I look at that scripture, the only way that I can honor her is to make something of my life now. Mm-hmm. And there is a God-given person for everybody created. And when you have a relationship with God, you discover your purpose. And my purpose is to be a positive and productive agent of social change. Now, I can do that, or I can continue doing the things I've been doing, and my life will have no value, no purpose whatsoever. I want to honor my grandmother. I want my life to have purpose, because in doing that, I find value in myself. That is what increases not only your self-esteem, but your own self-worth. You see yourself as being somebody. You see yourself as doing something, and thereby you contribute in a meaningful way. That's what all of this is about for me.
You know what, Rodney, I will say this as I'm listening to you talk, and I know I've shared this with you before, but I want to reiterate it, and I want to say it publicly, because we got 1 million people listening to us right now. I don't know why that God found favor in me to connect us, for me to be able to help you tell your story. Your story has power, and the impact of your story will reach a multitude of people. There are so many people, and I've said it before, there is somebody waiting on the other side of your story so that they can heal from their story. You just from what you just said has stopped some young man from going to prison. What you just said just changed a mindset and corrected a behavior that would probably have landed them doing time, hard time, or dead. And I am so honored that you chose me to help you take your story from a thought to a realization. And that's why telling your story, I believe that I am not perfect. Well, that's not true, because I'm in Christ, and the Bible says when you're in Christ, be perfect as Christ is perfect. I'm flawed. We all are flawed, but I believe that everybody has a story, and everybody deserves to tell their story. And I am so glad that you made it through those 30 years. And there are people who need to hear your story so that they can stop, they can halt it. There are women who are raising young men and don't know what to do. Their young men are all over the place and they don't know what to do. They need to hear your voice. So I am so blessed I'm just so blessed to know you, and I appreciate you for sharing your story. And I know it's not easy. I know it's, it's vulnerable and it's exposure, but we have to expose ourselves. When I wrote that book that you see, Walking Limitations, I put a picture in there of my leg. That's the first time I've ever shared my leg publicly. So if you have the book and you open up the book, you can see what my leg looks like. And it's exposure. I expose myself. And in telling your story, we expose ourselves. But the benefit is we empower somebody else to live. And I am just so, and y'all, I don't even know. I know what he's just shared. I don't even know all the whole story. I don't even know when he gets deep into it. I'm like, wow, what he has already shared with me has totally blown me away, because I have questions. Like, he's sitting here and he's not broken. He's not broken. There are a lot of people who come, and he may feel there may be some shattered glass, but you're not broken. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Because he has the strength and the courage to seek help. And sometimes just talking, that's a help. Just start talking. Just start talking. I am absolutely I'm just blown away. You know, I'm getting kind of emotional here, but I'm a wimp, so I'm a little sappy, so it's okay. It's okay. If you are listening and you're tuning in for the first time, I am LaQuita Parks. This is The Power of Your Story. And we are talking to Rodney Williams, and we're talking about fighting against the wind. And he's sharing bits of his story, and that's how we grow, and that's how we start to heal. And I will say, if you're listening and you just tuned in, please watch the replay. Go back, watch the link, share the link with your young men, with anybody who's dealing and struggling with mental health issues. Get help. There is help available, but start having the conversation. And Rodney, you said earlier, you have to talk about it, but make sure you talk about it to somebody you can trust. That's important. So Rodney, when can we expect that book of yours?
Well, based on the timeline that we just set, it should be out in December.
All right.
That is the projected release date. It is my goal to try to accelerate that. I'm not gonna make no excuses.
No.
And with you and the team that you have around you, let me say this: it's not a one-sided thing. You know, your publishing company is unique. You're unique, and the services that you provide, they're a gift from God, because a lot of people's story would not be told. You are inspiring, you're motivating, but at the core, you're just a gentle soul that, you know, you make people want to tell you stuff. And I'm the one that feels blessed, you know, and I know I haven't even gotten into all of the parts that your company and you provide, not even talking about the oils and all of that stuff, you know, but you are like one-stop shop, like a Walmart. You know, it's just so many things in there, right? So
yes,
I'm looking forward to any other platform that I can, you know, help provide support for you, anybody in the publishing company, because, you know, we're a team over here. So it's like we just support one another. I'm going to be more dedicated to the timeline. I have some things that I've been working on. I've been dealing with, you know, some gastro stuff. But once again, that's not an excuse. It's not going to stop me, because the story must be told and it must be circulated.
It will be. And so how can the people listening to you, how can they connect with you?
Well, besides my email and my phone number, I know that I have a Facebook account and Instagram account. I am not one of those people that update it on a regular basis. I actually got it to keep track of my nieces and nephews in Baltimore. But as we go forward in this process, I'm gonna be looking for new ways for people to reach out. But they can contact you, or they can contact me on my email at calebrlw@gmail.com. But other than that, you know, I travel a lot as a personal trainer. I also work a lot. I work 12 hours a day for a medical company. In between that and writing the book, there's not enough time in the day.
Stay busy.
However,
you know, you can always reach out to me. And if you want to connect with Rodney, I can connect the two of you, or whoever. If you need somebody to speak to your young men, this is the person to do it. This is the person to do it. If you're, you know, he's on Facebook, so you can connect, and, you know, he'll contact you and get to you. You're on there.
And my Facebook name is Louis Raven, and a lot of people ask me why I chose that, because I'm a diehard Baltimore Raven fan. Everything is Ravens with me, and Louis is just my middle name. So when I first got the Facebook account, I thought that everybody had like an alias. I wasn't, you know, trying to make up a name, but I'm everything Baltimore. I love my sports teams, and
well, that's okay. We'll get you. We'll get you. So I just want to say thank you again for being here. I know getting on was a little frustrating, but that's okay. We made it on, and it's okay. Things happen. I love I love people and I love helping people tell their stories. We come here every Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk about the power of your story. Every week there is a new guest, and that guest has a story, has an amazing story. We also, Rodney, we have to do our My Heart on Pages interview too. So that'll be another interview that we'll do and share it out. So when you think about telling your story, there are a lot of reasons why people don't tell their story. One of the reasons is because they don't know how, they don't want to be judged. Another reason is somebody has said, you know, don't nobody, my story isn't as interesting as your story. Well, don't compare your story to somebody else's story. Rodney and I both have a story, and our stories are completely different, but there is a meeting in between those stories. Even though his story, his life story is one way, my life story is another way, we still connect because we both had trauma within our stories. So your story is your story. So tell your story. I know that when people, you said, you know, some people don't even know that I've served 30 years in prison. Well, they don't know. And if you never share it, they will never know. But there is somebody, you're missing the opportunity. And I'm not advocating just go and stand on the corner and start telling everybody your story. Hey, you know, no, don't do that, because there's going to be somebody who's not going to appreciate your story. And that's okay. That's their business. It don't have anything to do with you. That's their business. Okay. But when you start to share your story and you need help, reach out to me if I can help you share your story. No matter where you are in the story writing journey, if you have a story, and I know that you do, because 100% of everybody living and dead has a story, I can help you get started. If you have gotten started and you find yourself stuck, I can help you get unstuck. And if you've written your story and you're ready to publish, I can help you do that too. Because if you don't share your story, you rob yourself of the opportunity to help somebody heal. You rob yourself of the opportunity to help you heal. And you also rob yourself. There are some stories that can mentor. Rodney, your story has the power to mentor some young people. I need to connect you with the young lady that I talked to yesterday, whose son has run away. And that young man is 15 years old, and he is, if somebody doesn't grab him, he's destined for trouble. He's destined for trouble. And there's always a why behind it. Something happened, you know, something happened, and something happens in our lives to bring us to this point where we are. But we always have the opportunity to do better. And so so Rodney, what's next for you? You got the book coming up, you work all the time, 24/7, work. So what, you know, training, what's next for you?
What's next is dealing with Dr. Allen and the Douglas County Youth Advisory Committee. They have a roundtable coming up, I know, June the 8th. Unfortunately, I got work that day, but I'm going to get with Dr. Allen before then. I have formulated a list of other Black male mentors, because one of the things that came up in our meeting was that for some reason people think it's a shortage of Black men willing to step up and stand in the gap. It's not. It's a lot of them out there. People just don't be looking in the right places. And I have formulated a list of people from different professions. I am real close with a lot of the professional bodybuilders at the gym. There are some law enforcement people there. There are some school teachers there. And most of them want to be used on this platform where they can influence the lives of others. They just don't know how to connect. So I'm going to try to connect mentors with people that need mentors. I'm going to provide, you know, my services wherever needed. However you need me, whether it's you, your dad, I'm just available, because, you know, I didn't get this far by myself. So I feel the need to give back, because I have been gifted just with certain talents, but it's other people that have protected me from myself so that my gift can come forth, because you can have all the gifts in the world and be self-destructive. So I thank the people that, you know, especially my family. My family has endured a lot. And my wife is, she's ride or die. She has endured.
That's a good ride or die.
Yeah, she has endured a lot. Just sticking with me. You know, a lot of times you get a lot of criticism because you stick with somebody that has even been incarcerated or.
Earl, if I was you, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be me.
You know. So I have to give her props. I mean, for at least at least 22 years straight, she was there every day. You're talking about 4 different states, 18 institutions. I can't never forget that. And anything that happens now is also a byproduct of her love and support. But all of that started with my grandmother and my family, who, and it's just like it's always women. It's time for the men to step up too. Because y'all been carrying the weight for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's some brothers, that's willing and ready to do that. So,
I like that. And as we wrap up, that you said, you brought up that we have a lane, and I hope I don't get any hate mail for this or hate emails, but we have a lane. The way that it was designed, we have a lane. Women have a lane, men have a lane. And the lanes have started to get blurred because everybody's not doing what they're supposed to do. So the men dropped the ball, so the women moved over in that lane. Some women dropped the ball, so the men had to move over in that lane. And so now the lines are all wicky wacky, and nobody knows where. There's no straight lines. So everybody has had to do what everybody needs to do. And then we have major chaos. It was not designed to be that way.
No.
But it is. And so we deal with the hand that we play the hand that we're dealt. And so as we wrap up, this has been an amazing conversation, Rodney. I once again thank you so very much. I look forward to working with you. I'm excited to get that book out and excited to hear more of your story. And it has been a plump, pleasing pleasure, better than a triple decker peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yes. So, you're the only one can say that. I hope you know that.
I have a friend that I borrowed it from. I always say, I borrowed. I don't steal things. I borrowed it from. And I was like, say what? So now I've adopted that, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I believe that wholeheartedly. So do you have any closing words before we say goodbye to our guests until next week?
Well, I just look forward to whatever life has for me. I pray that what I've shared tonight affects on my life. I just thank my family. I thank my wife. I thank all those that have supported me. And I thank you.
Thank you so much. Until next time, remember, if you have a story, and you do, write your story. Do not leave this world without sharing your story, because you have the power to help somebody heal. Until next Thursday, this has been another episode of The Power of Your Story. I'm your host, LaQuita Parks. Thank you to my guest, Rodney Williams. And listen, if you find yourself fighting with the wind, just stand still. Just stand still. You'll be